Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Monday to you. Josh's severe weather. We are monitoring now upgraded Tropical Storm Francine, which is heading towards Louisiana as a likely hurricane here on Wednesday, 9/11, and has the potential to strengthen pretty quickly here later tonight, tomorrow, and first thing on Wednesday into what could be the strongest hurricane to make landfall in the U.S. so far this season. I say so far because we're about halfway into the season, but we are going to talk about what to expect from Francine. Uh, Unfortunately on 9/11 of all days. But right now, the official hurricane forecast has climbed to this being a stronger Category 1 storm. I do personally start to believe now it's got the possibility of becoming a Category 2 at some point in the final hours leading up to landfall early in the night on Wednesday. We have seen somewhat of a shift to the right, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I did want to show you just what's going on. This is Francine. Actually, if I refresh it, you'll see that. And we have two areas to watch in the Atlantic that neither looks like it's going to develop in a hurry at this point. So really, Francine is the main system that we're focused on for the time being. Currently, winds are 50 miles per hour. The system is moving slowly northwest over the warmest portion of the Gulf of Mexico, where water temperatures are around 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 88 to 90 degrees. And this hatched area indicates areas where the ocean heat content is significant. Wind shear has dropped off, and the storm is formulating more of a center, more of a central core. And so it's going to take a little bit of time before it can strengthen, but is expected to be a strong tropical storm by tomorrow morning and a hurricane by tomorrow afternoon or night. And officially, the landfall now being shown as 7 in the evening Central Time as a Category 1 hurricane with 85-mile-per-hour winds. That would put it pretty similar to what Beryl was when Beryl made landfall in Matagorda Bay a couple of months ago. After that, the system will weaken significantly. Will track between Lafayette and Baton Rouge and eventually up towards Vicksburg, Mississippi, and a remnant low that will eventually kind of stall and fade over time once it gets to the Quad State region here by the end of this week. You will see that ensembles have gradually shifted this to the right, taking Texas out of the direct path of this system and bringing it a little bit farther to the right, closer to places like Baton Rouge and maybe even closer to New Orleans than what we'd like to think. But there's still some time for this to change because the storm has just begun to organize into an actual system. Models yesterday were being run on a future system. Now it is a system, so we will start to see more accuracy in our models. One thing that concerns me at this point is the opportunity for this system to intensify rapidly. And you'll see chances for that are fairly high. The reason why is that wind shear is going to remain fairly low here over the next 48 hours. You'll see it stays below 30 knots according to the ship's model. It does come up as the system gets up into here. At that point, it'll probably start to weaken as it makes its final approach. But look at these sea surface temperatures. We're right at about 32 Celsius, which is 90 degrees Fahrenheit, above the average. Even though the Northwest Gulf is cooled a little bit due to the recent rains, it is still running very warm. And there's plenty of storm fuel in place here for this system to strengthen into a hurricane during this time frame. The amount of moisture that the system is developing in is significantly high, up to 80%. It'll come down a little bit, but dry air doesn't really get involved into the system until we get to near landfall. So this system, I would prepare for it to not weaken much when it's making landfall until after landfall. It may come in here as still a strengthening system. Here's a look at the Gulf of Mexico. Let me move this along into time here, and you can see this is the official track where the system will make its nearest approach to deep South Texas tomorrow morning, then begin to turn and accelerate tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow night, becoming a hurricane by evening and continuing to strengthen. And as a result, we now have hurricane watches out for a good chunk of the Louisiana coastline here from Cameron all the way across Vermilion and Atchafalaya Bays down through Grand Isle. We do have a tropical storm watch that's in effect for the rest of southeastern Louisiana. That includes lakes Pontchartrain, Bourne, and Maurepas, and a tropical storm watch extending back to the Texas-Louisiana border and all the way to the edge of Galveston Bay here. We also do still have a tropical storm watch for northeastern Mexico, and that's been extended northward here onto Padre Island towards, I believe, Port Isabel would be the spot here east of Raymondville. But I think you're just getting clipped here by some gusty winds. Most of those stay offshore. So this is what we're looking at. I like this forecast personally. I think it's in pretty good shape, but it could still adjust a little bit. If it goes to the left, then obviously that would be worse for Lake Charles and certainly for Lafayette and Opelousas If it shifts to the right anymore, it's going to bring the core of the storm right over Baton Rouge, a highly populated area in Louisiana. If it goes right of Baton Rouge, then we have to be concerned in places like LaPlace and Hammond and Covington, Mandeville, and obviously New Orleans, Houma, and Thibodaux as well. And that would be kind of a worst case scenario at this point. So some key messages for you guys here. I need to refresh these. Likely a hurricane. I don't think we see anything below hurricane strength as it makes landfall. There's just nothing really to stop it. Increasing damaging wind to hurricane force in parts of southern Louisiana starting Wednesday and continuing through Wednesday night before the storm spins down late at night, Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. And certainly a lot of heavy rain coming as well with this system. There's a risk for flash flooding. It's already been pretty wet. We've got more of that on the way, even well to the east of where this center goes. So if you're in greater New Orleans, if you're in Mississippi, I haven't talked enough about you guys, and even Alabama, you are going to see heavy rain out of this, and there will be some storm surge as well. We do have a storm surge watch in effect, potentially 5 to 10 feet of storm surge, which will cause damage to vulnerable parts of the Louisiana coastline that have gotten hit so much. I know it's been 3 years. Hurricane Ida was the last big strike, but it's been a lot of storms over the last couple of decades, and obviously the coastline has felt that. So storm surge is going to be a big problem across this region here of Acadiana. All the way to Port Fourchon. We have 4 to 7 feet of storm surge coming up here through the Barataria Bay to the mouth of the Mississippi, 2 to 4 feet of storm surge across the east-facing coast of Louisiana and across the entire Mississippi coast and around the tidal basins and the lakes as well. And even west of Cameron, all the way to High Island, 3 to 5 feet of coastal surge expected, and 1 to 3 feet into Galveston Bay and all the way down to Freeport in areas that just got hit hard here a couple months ago. Here's when winds will start to pick up. Tropical storm force winds may clip parts of deep South Texas here late tonight, first thing tomorrow morning, and then up close to Corpus Christi and Baffin Bay here during the day tomorrow. But we'll start to see tropical storm force wind gusts on Galveston Island. It looks like late tomorrow evening as this storm is beginning to accelerate and beginning to intensify even more. And then we could see tropical storm force winds moving in as early as Wednesday morning to Sabine Pass, to southwest Louisiana, and then by Wednesday afternoon across southeastern Louisiana, and even extending inland. We have a moderate risk for flash flooding across most of Louisiana. A slight risk extends all the way back to Shreveport. Houston is fortunately going to be kind of west of where most of this is going to end up being. You're on the good side in Houston, but definitely there's still a risk if this does adjust back to the left a little bit, which is possible. You do need to just be prepared just in case. But I think primarily this is Louisiana's storm and maybe Mississippi's as well. I do have a slight risk for flooding all the way to the Florida Panhandle, all the way to the Appalachia Bay, even just to the west of Birmingham, places like Tuscaloosa, and down into Mobile and the rest of southern and western Alabama, most of Mississippi. Even the threat for some inland flooding extends up to near Little Rock, Memphis, and even to the Boot Heel of Mississippi and southwestern Kentucky. That time frame is going to be later Thursday into early Friday, where amounts may exceed 3 inches here in these areas. But the heaviest rains are expected near and just east of the center, including all of Baton Rouge and Lafayette and possibly New Orleans as well. Here's a look at what's going on with our satellite, and you can see very cold cloud tops below 80 degrees Celsius here on the infrared. It's about as cold as they really get at this point. And you can see while the center is not really growing and not really forming into a tightly focused system, we still do, in fact, have an intensification phase going on at this time. Sorry, my phone was ringing there. And you can see whatever is left of the front here is beginning to retreat. So we do have some rain focused along this front. We no longer have a low pressure center on the front like we had a couple days ago. But the center of the storm is actually down in here on the southeastern part of this cloud canopy. And right now it's moving slowly northwest, but should get to a point where it will start to get accelerated more to the northeast, as there will be a bit of a shortwave trough that digs into Texas and pushes this eastward. You'll be able to see that actually on the water vapor image I'm about to share with you here. Here's the water vapor image, and you can see if I zoom this out here to the rest of the western Atlantic here. Actually, let's just look at the U.S. That'll keep things a little bit more simple here. Okay, so what you'll be able to see here is there's a shortwave trough here. There's a bit of a trough here. These are going to be moving in this direction. And what happens is this system is not going to be able to go anywhere but to the right as this trough approaches it. Bigger trough in place here, big ridge in place over here. So it's going to get attracted to the trough and go around this high pressure area that is across far southern Florida for the time being. So that's what we're looking at steering wise. Here's a closer look at the infrared, and sorry we lost our image at the last couple of frames, but let me just pause it, go back one for you here. And this was the image taken here at about 10:30 in the morning Central Time, and kind of tough to see, but there is a bit of a center. It's kind of in this area in here. We had kind of a weak center here and a weak one here, but they are finally starting to consolidate here as hurricane hunters have been investigating to look for where a center may be. And you can kind of see that now on our latest recon information here. You can see that there is, in fact, a center in place here. There was one over here earlier, but now kind of the main core is in this area, right at about 23 degrees north and 94.5 west. There's also still a bit of a center over here, but enough to call this a tropical storm. Yesterday, we had all kinds of centers all over the place with weak winds. Now we're starting to see winds picking up in here. So certainly we are seeing that classification to a tropical storm. Now, models have been running, and we're going to have our first model run at 18Z. It'll be available here about 2 o'clock Central Time, as this has actually been a classified storm. So this run was before we actually had that designation. But you can see a very strong agreement that this moves into southwest and south central Louisiana, right through the heart of Acadiana. Only one model takes it into New Orleans. Nothing takes it west of Lake Charles towards Texas anymore. So this is definitely good agreement, and one that I can certainly get behind. The intensity forecast is still a bit more challenging, but as we get to 48 hours, which would be 7 in the morning on Wednesday, more than half of our models have this as a Category 1 hurricane, and several go up to Category 2. Less of them showing that this remains a tropical storm. If there's one thing I've learned when we're dealing with low wind shear and high ocean heat content, the higher models are probably going to end up getting this right. So Category 2 is very likely, in my opinion, here when we get into Wednesday morning. It's not completely out of the question we go a little bit higher, even close to Cat 3. I really hope we don't, but not out of the question with the rapid intensification models showing that we're heading in that direction. But there will be increasing wind shear after 48 hours and some drier air. So this may hit a point where it does plateau and weaken just a touch before it actually makes its final approach. Either way, though, it's going to be a nasty system, and we're going to need to watch it very closely. Here's the GFS from earlier. I'm going to try to bring up the 12Z here in just a second. I guess it's not quite there on Tropical Tidbits. And you can see around this time tomorrow, we will have a stronger tropical storm. And then it looks like tomorrow night, this is going to be before midnight, we have a pretty well-defined central dense overcast and an eye-like feature. And this system moves into Louisiana with Category 2 intensity here Wednesday evening. This is 7 o'clock Central. This is 1 o'clock Central. So GFS says it's going to go right over Marsh Island here at about 5 in the evening and then weaken significantly. By the way, that puts the eye wall in the Baton Rouge area later in the evening on Wednesday night, and then a weakening system after that. So that's the GFS model. This is a tropical model, HWRF, and it's struggling to resolve where the low pressure is formed. It's too far west, but it is showing intensification. And so I do think this is going to end up a little bit too far west, but you can see pressures are down to 979 here by Wednesday afternoon. It's a little slower. I think it might actually end up in here at this point, but winds are approaching Category 2 intensity at this point. Here's a look at the HMON tropical model. Again, probably too far west at this point, but you can see it evolves into a hurricane and moves more to the northeast, and pressures down to 975 millibars, and then some gradual weakening right in the final hours of landfall, and then taking that low right over Lafayette, just west of Baton Rouge, right up to about Krotz Springs and Simmsport, and then right up the Mississippi River and out of the area, thank goodness, by Thursday. Finally, we'll look at one other tropical model, the HAFS. This one has the quickest amount of intensification. It actually brings this system up to borderline Category 3 intensity, and that would be at midnight tomorrow night. So in about 36 hours, this model is certainly aggressive and shows that potential for what could be a pretty powerful system here, at least a Category 2, but possibly Category 3. You'll see the pressure drops off at about 961 and then does start to climb in the very final hours on its approach. So unlike Beryl, this system probably will peak before it hits, but it may not be much before it hits. Eventually, it will have to weaken here, but it may take a little bit longer for that to happen. Then you'll see This particular model still brings a core right over Baton Rouge, Port Allen, St. Francisville, and then up into southwestern Mississippi here. Here's a look at what winds may look like. If we're looking at just one of the HAFS models, we could see gusts in excess of 100 miles per hour here over the Western Gulf here tomorrow night. That will go over some of the oil rigs, a very well-defined system if this model is correct. In fact, it is showing wind gusts. You can barely see it on the map here, as high as maybe 130 miles per hour. Those are gusts. Those are not sustained winds, but those are pretty significant. And then it comes down just a little bit as it makes its landfall. Now, this particular model takes the eye just southeast of Baton Rouge, right over Ascension Parish here. And that obviously would be more of a concern for New Orleans, if correct. You can see this 75-mile-per-hour wind gust over the Kenner area and places like Butte, Louisiana. Obviously, we got to be watching there. This could end up over here and bring those eye wall winds into Ascension and East Baton Rouge and Livingston parishes. Again, there's going to be some waffling of where this goes, but it no longer indicates that Southeast Texas gets the strong winds, and someone in South Central and maybe Southeastern Louisiana gets the strongest winds. That's the HAFS model. The model that was stronger was the HAFS-B. That was the A. You can see the B a little farther west, but I mean, it's showing wind speeds that may gust as high as 137 miles per hour here. So this is kind of the worst case scenario. It is farther west, but it does bring the eye wall right over Baton Rouge, right over Prairieville, right over Gonzales, Denham Springs, Livingston, Louisiana, and then eventually these winds do slowly come down. But if the system gets stronger, there's going to be a good core with it that can bring strong winds all the way into northeast Louisiana and even into the Jackson, Mississippi area potentially here late Wednesday night into Thursday. I will have more modeling coming up in the coming days that will break down more of where the tornado threat might be. I think that is something we need to be concerned with, especially in this area here, southeast Louisiana, much of Mississippi, and maybe western Alabama. I do think there will be a tornado risk. The stronger this gets, the more likely that we could even see a bit of a tornado risk up into western Tennessee as we get into Thursday evening. So that's something I do want to talk about in future videos. We're not going to have much time to analyze it today. So those are the hurricane models. Here's the global models. European control, bringing those hurricane force winds up to southwest Louisiana and into the Atchafalaya Basin here Wednesday night. Even tropical storm force winds into southwestern and central Mississippi Wednesday night, Thursday morning. This was the GFS from earlier. I'll show you the new one. I don't think it's going to be a lot different, but you can see shifting those strong winds just a tiny bit to the east. If we zoom in on Louisiana, and let me load the 12Z here. I've been working all morning, but you can see here that these tropical storm force winds make it to the coast early on Wednesday morning and then start to move inland towards lunchtime. And hurricane force winds can encompass places like Marsh Island and New Iberia and Avery Island, and possibly even Morgan City and Patterson in those areas. Maybe hurricane force winds getting up into Iberville Parish, into West Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge, and Ascension parishes here. We'll even see tropical storm force winds getting into places like Jackson, Mississippi, maybe Vicksburg, Tallulah, and possibly even up into the Delta region here late Wednesday evening into early Thursday morning. So a very dynamic system and one that's changing quickly, but this is potentially our biggest hit so far in the U.S. this season. Rainfall is also going to be a challenge here to forecast, but you'll see a pretty big area on the blend showing between 6 and 10 inches across Louisiana. Houston, about an inch. Beaumont, about 3 inches. Natchitoches, 2 to 3 inches. 3 inches in Monroe. 4 inches in places like Greenville, Mississippi, and Vicksburg, as well as Jackson. And not to ignore those of you in the coastal region here, but even all the way over to Panama City, the potential to see over 3 inches of rain. And we could deal with some local flash flooding here as well across western Tennessee, the Delta region, eastern Arkansas, southeast Missouri, maybe even far southern Illinois and southwestern Kentucky. Time frame on that heavy rain is expected to be during the day Thursday into Thursday night. Let's look at the rest of the tropics real quick here before I run out of steam. Obviously, very well-organized Francine here, likely to intensify pretty quickly. We've got a lingering boundary here across the offshore waters here of the ocean, extending up into Newfoundland, which should start to dry out a little bit here. Quiet in Bermuda right now. We've got an area of high pressure in place here. We've got a wave that's bringing some nasty weather to the islands today. I'll show you that in a little bit. and then several little areas to watch in here, a couple of oranges and another wave that just came off of Africa. Also an area in the Pacific that may develop, but it'll be moving away from mainland Mexico. Could affect the Baja here as we get later into the weekend. Here's another look here at the Western Atlantic, and looking pretty good in Bermuda for the time being. We do see some convergence over Puerto Rico and Eastern Dominican Republic. See that southwesterly flow. There's a little bit of an upper level feature in here that's inducing some of that and producing some of those heavier showers. You can see the islands are definitely getting hit here. Pretty wet morning across St. Lucia, Dominica, Martinique, all the way down to the Grenadines as they clean up from Beryl a couple months ago. A little bit of a circulation here, but it's not looking super impressive. And then an area that potentially could consolidate and develop into maybe our next system after that. Gordon's the next name on the list, by the way, and it may have a light foot with it. Here's a look at the Eastern Atlantic. Again, watching multiple waves coming off, but nothing imminently developing. This is the wave we've been watching in the Central Atlantic. It's at about 14 north, and tough to read the longitude here. But let me get this off the screen. Y'all can't see it. 41 west. So pretty much directly halfway between the Cape Verdes and the islands. And it is not looking any better organized than yesterday. Models that have been run here are showing generally a westward track, and then it should pull up and make a turn to the north. And honestly, I don't think it develops in this area at all. I think if it does develop, it's going to make the turn and do it up in here, which is great news for those of you guys in the Leeward Islands. It's either going to be weak and it won't develop, or it's going to turn away and it will develop. You can see that here on the ensembles, just much fewer models today and ensembles showing development of this system. And as a result, it could likely stay pretty weak in here. There's a small chance it tries to strengthen and hits an area of lower wind shear, but it'll be away from the islands at that point. And showing you guys the latest GFS here. Again, the farther out we get, the less certain this ends up being, but you can see this low pressure system, it's no longer showing any rapid development with it. This is next weekend. The feature after it, though, does have a chance of developing, but it may take some time. And if it does so, I don't think it's going to be a threat to land at this point. So good news on that front. The Gulf should quiet down after the system moves out by Thursday into Friday, but we've got a ways to go before that happens. So if you're in Louisiana, in Mississippi, you definitely need to be making some final preparations here as this storm continues to look like it'll intensify, perhaps rapidly, as we get to tomorrow and tomorrow night. Appreciate everybody's time today. I am praying for the safety of everybody in the path of future Hurricane Francine. And as always, if you did enjoy this video, if it was helpful to you, please share with your friends and consider becoming a subscriber. Hope you all have a wonderful day. God bless you. I give all the honor and glory to God. It has been a blessing being a Christian and being able to use my gift to help share with other folks the weather. But I also want to share the good news. Isaiah 40:31 NIV says, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." It's been hurricane after hurricane here in the Gulf region. It's very easy to be weary. I've been through storms in my life. I've lived in Louisiana. I know exactly what it's like. I've not had the worst of it, obviously, but it is difficult. It's just frustrating to see your dreams being squashed by Mother Nature. It really is. So my encouragement for you is to continue to pray and hope in the Lord, who will give you the strength and the courage to withstand these storms. You may never be in a spot where you were before a hurricane hit, but spiritually, you have a chance to grow in the Lord and in Jesus Christ. And that is so much more important than what we see here on earth. It's what awaits for us here eternally. And I just want to spend a quick minute of my day to pray for you. And if you have any prayer requests, I am happy to honor those. Just know that I care about every single person that comes here, whether or not they choose to share my beliefs. And I want everybody to be safe, and I want you guys to be prepared. But more importantly, I want to see you eternally one day. So I'm going to leave it there. But I will share again with you guys tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day. See you soon.